Hi everyone. So this is going to be like I'm going to have to do a compilation for this. I decided because there's simply too many stories. I can't remember them all. Uh, but basically, I'm going to get into it. I've spent a lot of time in sober houses. Sometimes they call them halfway houses. They have a very bad reputation for being extremely scammy. Let me explain. Take a room. I don't know how much you can see. You can't really see how big this room is, but it's not a huge room. This would be, one person would live in here. A couple, for a two-person couple, would be pretty cramped to have this as a bedroom. If this was a sober house, they would have four people in here, possibly six. I was in an eight-man room that wasn't much bigger than this. You gotta figure that's eight people in all their worldly possessions. Basically, you just take a house that you could rent out, and you can make about three or four or even more times as much profit if you make it into a sober house. And also, none of your tenants have real rights. I don't know. I think in California there's certain law, but I know in Michigan, I don't think there's any specific laws for sober houses. I've always actually wondered when people have been living there and getting mail and whatnot, and then they get kicked out for like blowing dirty. Is that really legal? Like they say, okay, they signed a contract, but is that contract, can you really evict somebody to being homeless based on drinking and like some contract you printed off in Microsoft Word? I don't know. But anyways, they're known for being very shady because they are. There's ones that, are ran well, but for the most part, they're just a way for people to make a shitload of money really quick with real estate. And they're pretty much always ran by former addicts who are not always the most moral people. They're actually very often involved in shady bullshit exactly like this. You see them selling multi-level marketing shit on Facebook. It's the same types of people. I don't know what it is, but when people get sober, all of a sudden they want to become entrepreneurs. But anyways, I've been in a few sober houses, and some of them were, just straight up cash grabs, and some of them were good. But the one I spent the most time in was the last one, which I'm not going to name it, but I'm going to use the guy's real name, real first name, which was Brad. And this is the guy that ran the house. And, at first I thought Brad was just kind of a dork, but I didn't think that much of him. He had said that I think he had like 2 or 3 degrees. He claimed he used to be the head therapist for the Chippewa tribe. He really bragged about that one. He was one of those guys, and this is real common in northern Michigan. One of those white guys that like kind of fetishizes native stuff. That's like a real common thing for like white people to like really be into like idolize natives. So like he was saying like yeah, me, a white man, was like the head therapist. Like that was like a brag. So anyways, he had that, and I think he claimed, to have, Navy. He was in the Navy, and then Golden Gloves. And hold on a second.
Hey, you can't be in this room, dude.
What the heck? Anyways, yeah, so and he was an older guy, and he had this big sober house, so it didn't seem out of the realm of possibility that he had lived a life. But then as I got to, spend more time around him, I saw, he had this big house that he rented out as a sober house. And that used to be his house. He didn't live there anymore. He had a single wide trailer he lived in with a Filipino bride. Yeah, he was one of those guys. And a lot of these sober house guys, like, they'll have like another job, like they have other things going on, and then they just manage the sober house on the side, or they hire somebody to, because it's really not a full-time job. But for this dude, he didn't work. He had the wife working, but he didn't work, and he just kind of sat around and like, played king of the castle at the sober house. So that kind of, I started wondering like that it just really didn't line up with a dude who had all of these accomplishments. So the first instance that really brought to light that he was, a BSer was when I enrolled in school. I had to take a placement test, and I ended up taking it, and I got the highest placement, which was, I think, pre-calculus. And he asked me, and I said, I tested into pre-calculus, which was the highest. I tested into pre-calculus, which was the highest. To which he replied, "Oh, yeah, I remember when I took my ACT placement test, they said the next highest math class up would be nuclear physics." Which I don't, first of all, obviously that's ridiculous. I don't think that would be considered a math. Like, wouldn't that be science? I'm not a science guy, but I don't think that would be math. It is ridiculous. It is. Anyways, he said that with a straight face, and because I thought he was joking at first, but then like, and it suddenly things started clicking in my head where I was like, oh my god, like this dude doesn't have all these degrees. For one, he's a moron, and just right now I can tell he's a liar. And I also started wondering, was this guy ever even an addict? I think he just got into the sober house hustle as a hustle. But anyways, cut to like 3 weeks, probably like a month later, I was studying for my first test. And he sees me with my nose in the book, and he asks me what I'm doing. And I'm like, oh, I'm studying. He's like, no, what are you studying? And I'm like, well, what is it, Matt? You don't know what I'm talking about, but apparently he does. So anyways, I tell him polynomials. And he launches into this spiel. I should have pre-wrote something. I can't do it. But I can't do it as good as he could. But he did. He said, oh, a polynomial. Well, a polynomial is just a monomial who has had Pythagorean's theorem applied to its x-axis and quantified by the parabola of t minus. And he's saying real terms. Like he must have had math classes at some point, because he's throwing stuff out like Pythagorean's theorem and quadratic equation, and in like, he's talking like not really calculus, but like pre-calc level stuff, parabolas, logarithmic, but it's pseudo babble. None of it makes sense. Like the first sentence where he said a polynomial is just a monomial, that was like starting to be in the realm of reality, and from there it just turned to total gibberish. And he went on for like, I don't want to exaggerate, but probably like 30 seconds of gibberish. And he's saying this to me, who is literally studying math, and he knows I placed well, so he knows like I have a decent understanding of math, so I know that he's talking gibberish. And he said it to me with a straight face and walked away. And that was truly when the worm turned. And I had already been seeing like some of this dude's shady business practices. First of all, he had like his estranged foster son, and he charged his estranged foster son. Not only did he charge him, I understand charging the kid around, he charged him like the bullshit $500 move-in fee for paperwork. And I was like, God, that's low to do that to your own. But anyways, I saw other times people would like drop dirty for simple stuff like weed, and he would basically just take money from them, make them pay $500 or else be homeless or something, get reported to the probation officer. He did that with me. He was basically extorting me. Don't get me wrong. I had relapsed in the house on kratom, not anything hard. And I was in a position where, if I got kicked out, my probation officer found out, I would be in trouble. So when I got in trouble for the kratom, he gave me an offer that he would counsel me for what was it? I think it was like $120 a week. It was basically another $500 a month my family had to pay for him to counsel me. But he said his license had just lapsed. There was a little period, a lapse of expiration. So it wouldn't actually be therapy. It would just be more mentoring. And this dude would about 15 minutes a week, he would like pull out a notebook and we'd make a list of like resentment, he would do like some little formality, and he would take a check from my family for $500 every month for that little bullshit. Like I said, I'm gonna have to make like I'm gonna have to record multiple times. One other creepy thing is, we met the Filipino. It wasn't a mail order wife. We assumed it was a mail order wife until I started talking to her, and she said that she met Brad when he was stationed as a Marine in the Philippines. And, I know a little bit about something, and I know that the Marines had their the Marines kind of closed down their bases like hardcore. Something happened in the Philippines around like 1993 where like US, like the military heavily pulled out of there, I think. So anyways, that's the time period I think she was talking about. And I did the math on when he was in the Marines, and it had to be before that. And she was significantly younger than him. And it came out to like because I think she would have had to been born in like 1980. I was like, oh, she's talking about she met Brad when she was like 12 or 13 or even younger. So yeah, like so Brad met this little Filipino girl as a child and then came back in adulthood and married her. So I don't know. We never found out what like the whole story was behind that. Seemed very creepy. He was incredibly possessive. She wasn't, like, don't get me wrong, she wasn't like a bad looking woman, but she was like a 44-year-old Filipino. And we weren't, put it like this, we weren't trying to hit on her. But we had like little barbecues at the house, and I was talking to her about the Philippines. I was like, hey, what's the public opinion like on Duterte or whatever their president was back then? Just like I'm literally asking her questions about her homeland. And from across the barbecue, Brad sees me talking to his wife and makes a beeline and interrupts the conversation and like sends me to the kitchen to like put away dishes or something. Like literally like that paranoid that I was going to try to swoop on his like, hotel maid cleaning lady wife. I don't know. It's very weird. That's another thing too. I don't say that like demeaning about, to like demean her job. It's kind of funny. We get the impression that she definitely moved to the country under the impression that she was going to be living in that big ass house that he later turned into a sober house and then moved her into the single wide trailer. And then he made her get a job, which probably she liked. She was probably happy to get out of the house. And meanwhile, he went and like fucked around in the sober house all day. And the last thing for this little session. So when you joined the sober house, you had to do 50 hours of community service. Sounds reasonable, right? It's a sober house. You're supposed to be doing something, turning your life around. Well, guess what community service was? Doing yard work for him, which eventually turned into like doing straight up construction work for him. Originally on the sober house, he would have people do work on the sober house that he probably should have been paying legit money for, but they were doing it for community service. And then he eventually just had people like working on his own personal house as community service. And eventually those hours ran out because, like I said, he only had 50 of them. So he started paying a couple guys to do work. Not much money and under the table, of course. And then when it came time to calculating the pay, I remember this. My buddy had 20 hours worked, and Brad tried to pay him for like 12 hours. And I'll give it, my buddy brought it up in front of everybody, like in front of, it was right after a morning meeting. So everybody was around there. And it was like, he brought it up like, you know what? Nope, keep those extra 8 hours. And he made Brad look like incredibly petty. And he knew he looked petty too. But yeah, I couldn't believe that, man. He was only paying him like $12 an hour too, and tried to scam him out of like 8 hours. It was just unbelievable, especially because, he purported himself as truly a guru. I'm talking about, I remember we were in an AA meeting one time and somebody had just passed away. And there was a little bit of debate on if we should talk about it, because they had died from drinking, obviously. And other people were like, well, we don't know, we shouldn't. And it was like, no, they died from drinking. And, there's this debate going back and forth, and Brad the guru raises his hand. A woman has just died. And he raises his hand and goes, I think what Laura would have wanted is for us to turn to page 156 and read. He literally used the woman's death to push his little agenda. Oh man, he was a trip. I'm gonna have to it's tired. I'm getting tired. I gotta go to bed. But let me think of some more Brad stories, man, or just sober house stories in general. I saw some crazy stuff go down in them, man. When you have that many former addicts, former drunks under one roof, it's just it's a recipe for disaster. I've seen so many times just we are sitting in a living room and all of a sudden somebody just walks through hammered and like thinks that nobody can tell, just like crazy scenes. So anyways, I'm gonna get off for tonight. I really want to thank my fans. I read a lot of your comments and I truly appreciate your positivity. It's something I don't have in my real life, like that support and that recognition for doing something. So I really appreciate you guys. I just want to say that. Thank you.